while. And then I got like my first few office jobs and stuff, and I was dating a girl and just kind of had that realization because I was still kind of in that space. And once I had that realization, it was like I said, like a flip, like light switch got flipped off. When I came back, they were the same, and I had really progressed because, well, not only did I learn from a new school where I was forced to learn new things,
right?
They had stagnated. They had been doing the same things and the same things and the same things, and now I was ahead of them rather than they were my peers, right? So, so there's like two answers. You do need to push yourself and try not to make mistakes, and usually I save those times for when a technique,
Right.
and they would not, it'd just be struggling. Then all I said was, just watch me with your eyes, and you're gonna be my shadow. And the way that you say things to them too, like if you just talk to them, if you just talk at them, they're gonna zone out. You have to like encourage their wonder, right? And you're gonna be can you be my shadow? You know, and they mimic, and suddenly they were doing the almost perfectly. I didn't even have to help them with the technique. You know, that you just demonstrate to them and make them.
So, yeah, gosh, so you're owner of the base, Jiu-Jitsu gym here in Boise. So it looks like, I mean, you've been in a lot of different tournaments. You get your black belt in 2016 under Mitch, right? And I understand Mitch had like a big impact in this area for the Jiu-Jitsu community, right?
Yeah.
You also trained with or under Andrew Smith. A Revolution Jiu-Jitsu. And then 2022, you get your second degree black belt, and that's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, that's kind of when you can branch off on your own and not be under an affiliation. So basically, it's the IBJJF standard for being able to promote a black belt under your own name.
Nice.
Yeah, so otherwise you have to promote under an affiliation, which we were, when Mitch owned the base, we were under Alliance Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the biggest teams in the world, if not the biggest. I think there's a couple that are, I think Gracie Baja and Checkmat are a little bigger now.
Okay.
But they were at the time kind of like the top tier world team.
Okay.
Marcelo Garcia came out of there, Lucas Lepre, many others. But Fabio Gagel and Gigi, who now owns Alliance out in Eagle, and then one other guy, I'm trying to remember who it was. Jacare, not the UFC fighter, but they were the three owners of Alliance, and then Gigi sold his gym in Brazil to move here and open a gym here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you trained under Gigi at some point too?
I took some seminars from him, but he lived in Brazil at the time, so he would come up maybe once every 2 or 3 years and do a seminar. So,
and does he live here now?
Yeah, he lives in Eagle. He always liked it when he would come. And then Brazil had a lot of corrupt politics and stuff that he didn't really agree with.
Yeah,
and so he was looking to escape from that environment, and he really liked it here, so he moved here.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, like, what got you into jiu-jitsu? Like, when did you start jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so my story of starting jiu-jitsu is kind of like a typical one, I guess I would say. Like, I was in the bartending scene here when I was in my young 20s, and it was not the best environment. Like, there was a lot of good things about it. It actually taught me to be very social. I mean, I was always pretty social, but I got really good at networking, and one of the skills that bartending teach you actually translate very well in business with like kind of always trying to find a connection, you know. The better you connect with somebody, the better your tips were. So
yeah,
I actually did an experiment when I was bartending of just remembering people's names and then saying their name every time they come in. And I still do that to this day in jiu-jitsu. I acknowledge everybody as they come through the door by their name. Everybody always asks me how I remember everybody's name, but it's because I say it every single day.
Dang.
And it makes you feel part of something, right? Just remembering somebody's name makes a difference in how they perceive you.
It is a very big thing because a lot, like, people love to hear their name, like subconsciously at some level, right?
Then
That's what some
say. If you think about it, it's the first connection, right? Hey, I'm Alex. Hey, I'm BJ.
Yep.
Now we're connected, and we can start to find common ground.
Absolutely. And being able to remember people's names is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was in the bartending scene, and and Mitch was the head of security at the time for the 3 bars. They were like the only main bars downtown. Was Roddy's, what's now Strangelove, was used to be China Blue, and what's now
Sure, like Dirty Roddy's.
no Bistro.
Oh, the bistros
Now
it's like the whiskey bar or something like that, or
what's it called? Anyways, on 6th and Main, those 3 bars were like the main bars downtown.
are those the ones that are owned by
Ted
Ted, right?
Yeah,
Ted,
Challenger
yeah,
Group.
yeah.
Yep. It's still kicking, still doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Doing some other things too. But yeah, so I was bartending and young and honestly just kind of angry. And I didn't really know that about myself at the time, but like I kind of had to go through some self-discovery and realized that like I mean, so drinking was actually kind of encouraged on the job. You actually got like a bar tab so that you could kind of give away free shots and develop that develop your, we used to call them regulars, like we want regulars, right? So you give away a free shot, you start to connect, and they come back and they come back. And so it actually kind of created a horrible, I wasn't like an alcoholic, but like when I would drink, I would get angry.
You just got to have it.
Yeah. And so I would honestly be looking for excuses. Like I wasn't a bouncer, but if there was a fight that broke out, I would try to go get in the middle of it. Not necessarily to fight, but I literally would jump the bar sometimes to go like separate people or whatever. And ended up getting into some altercations and realizing I didn't really know how to fight, and I didn't really know why I was going over there to do that, And so I heard about Mitch, and there was some like stories, of him, using his martial arts skills. I'll just say that to de-escalate these situations.
John Wake the situation?
Kind of, yeah, to be honest. And so his lore preceded him, and then I met him, and then I told my brother about it. Actually, I was like, oh man, he's getting together this small group of guys, and there were no real like jiu-jitsu gyms around at the time. It was,
oh really? Okay.
Yeah, he had just started this, and so there were only like 20 guys, and he was sharing time at the Gold's Gym, which is now Axiom on Park Center.
Okay.
And they had a boxing ring upstairs.
No way.
Yeah, so after hours, so they didn't used to be open 24 hours. So they let us go in at 10 p.m. and use the boxing ring as a jiu-jitsu class.
Your mat.
Yep. And so we would go there, and
were they charging you guys or?
Mischarged us. I don't know what they charged him. Whatever. Sure. But that's kind of how I got started. But I hadn't gone at that point. I had told my brother about it, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it was like intimidating or if I just didn't find the time or care that much. But I hadn't gone in yet, and then my brother and I caught up a month later, and after I told him, and he had started going, so I was like, I can't let my little brother get ahead of me. So I went in and started training, but I was still in that atmosphere of bartending and still an angry young man. And so one day I'd been training for maybe like 6 months, and Mitch pulls me aside after practice, and he said, I heard you've been getting into fights downtown. And I thought we were about to like share some stories, right? Like, oh, this one time, oh, cool. I get to tell him about some of my stuff now, and it was not like that. He was like, "You're connected to my name now, and so anything you do looks badly on me." And so he's like, "You have to either quit the bar or you can't train." Ooh. And he's like, "I'll give you a month to find another job." And so I quit the next day. Yeah, interesting. And so he paid for my gym membership. He didn't charge me. And while I found a job so I could keep training, yeah. And
very interesting. So he was like a big catalyst then, for sure. And yes, into like jiu-jitsu, but also in like, hey, you have now come to almost like a fork on the road, in life. And he's the face that kind of brought it to your attention and said, either you pick where you're going, this route that you're going down on, and it's not gonna be good.
It's a dark road, yeah.
Or you like training, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that a lot of people out there think that people that train martial arts are the violent ones, and it's so opposite. It's usually the people that don't know how to fight and don't understand the real consequences of what can occur in a fight, especially if the other person is well trained.
Absolutely.
That are typically the hotheads.
Absolutely. That was me. I had no background in fighting other than being in a boxing club in high school, and we didn't really have a teacher. It was just us kind of messing around, you know. And I had no skills, and so what you learn really fast when you start training is you don't want to fight. Like my first story of my first training partner was a short, chubby, out of shape, even though he was training jiu-jitsu, purple belt, and looked like he was somebody's tax accountant.
Right.
And just mopped the floor with me.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, I'm younger, you know, I'm more handsome, faster, stronger. I should be able to do whatever I want with this guy. And he was just wrapping me up, and I had no free will. That was what I realized, is like, my body is not my own. Like I can't move.
It's humbling.
It's humbling. And so yeah, that was 6 minutes of torture. And I was like, I was hooked day one. Like I was hooked. I was obsessed. Right. Couldn't stop thinking about it.
Which happens a lot with people that join jiu-jitsu. Right. You got like white belts after 3 months saying like, this changed my life.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you don't even know yet.
Sure.
You don't know
yet. For sure. Yeah.
What has been, and obviously I didn't unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know you back then, you know. And I say that in not just from your perspective, but my perspective as well. Right. There's times where people are just not ready to meet each other, right? There's like a course in life that needs to occur before those paths can finally cross.
Timing.
Yeah, for something good, right,
for sure,
to occur. So I'm glad I know you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I had a lot of self-discovery to do before I even liked myself. That was another thing with my, like when I was 27 by the time I was like, I think, you know, I'm angry. Why am I angry all the time, especially when I drink? And I know it sounds dumb, but like, and this kind of takes me back to Mitch actually, which I was like, I think I'm angry at my dad.
Okay.
Because like my dad was not a bad dad, but he wasn't around very much and didn't really teach me much.
Right.
He didn't teach me how to be a man, really.
Right.
Like, I was basically raised by my mom, and I would see my dad like twice a week for dinner or lunch or something like that. And so I think I started viewing Mitch as my older brother, even father figure.
He was like a fatherly figure.
So he was very, you know, masculine, and he was very disciplined and very no BS, just black and white. And and I needed that.
And he had this skill that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to acquire that skill too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because for you to be able to have that realization, right, that, I mean, you see a lot of adults are still their, you know, 8-year-old selves, emotionally stuck in whatever occurred to them. And there's a saying, whatever happened to you as a kid is not your fault, but it is your responsibility as an adult to heal it.
Yeah.
And so many people that are still blaming their childhood or their parents for this and that. And so for you to be able to have that breakthrough, right? And it's not like you're still angry at your dad or like you see him as like this less than, you know, or incompetent father.
Right.
But
he's just a person.
But it had to happen in order for you to have another perspective of life.
For sure.
Have this realization, right?
Yeah, it was super cathartic for me to just realize that. Like, just to like have that. I literally was not angry anymore when I would drink after. I just accepted that. It was weird. Like, it was almost like a switch just got flicked off. And so yeah, and then just viewing him as a person who makes mistakes, and we can have the type of relationship that he wants to have, and that's got to be okay. And you know,
where in the jiu-jitsu journey were you when you had that realization?
I was a 4-stripe blue belt. I was about to move to Virginia. That was right before I moved to Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I had kind of like quit the bars, and I've been training for a while. And then I got like my first few office jobs and stuff, and I was dating a girl, and just kind of had that realization because I was still kind of in that space. And once I had that realization, it was like I said, like like light switch got flicked off.
Do you think that the journey that you had in jiu-jitsu so far to that point helped you in some way finally start asking yourself the right questions and looking inwards as to like, okay, where is this anger actually coming from? Like, what do I need to give my attention to? or was this just another thing outside of jiu-jitsu per se that maybe helped you get?
No, it absolutely helped me, because I think some of the things that jiu-jitsu teaches you is that, first of all, there's no external blaming in jiu-jitsu. Like it's just you and another person. So there's no variables, outside factors. You either have trained and increased your skills to the point where you are better than the other person, or you're not. And it also teaches you that you can improve your situation by fixing one thing at a time. If you look at it as a big insurmountable problem, it's like that story, like every wall gets built one brick at a time.
Right.
And you also want to fix the things that you can fix that are right within your reach. Like Mitch used to say, don't reach across the dinner table. It's out of your reach. It's rude to reach across the dinner table.
Right.
And you're going to get punished for that, right? So you want to fix each thing in front of you and lay the path forward. And I think that has still impacted my life every day, because I used to kind of like get kind of overwhelmed, like even just thinking about like going to college or some project that I would undertake, if it just seemed really big. So being able to break it down into pieces made everything much more approachable and surmountable.
Yeah, that's what I found. I mean, the short time that I have been practicing and did practice, because let's be honest, I haven't been there for a couple of months now. It's, life. But
Life happens.
in the short amount of time, I'm still a white belt. I'm still white as snow. That I've been, I practice jiu-jitsu under you, actually, right?
Yeah.
It is very interesting how it correlates with a lot of things in life, and I feel that like jiu-jitsu, to me, when you're put into those difficult situations where you can't move because this person just has a complete control of you, and you realize that you no longer have control, those self-doubts, whatever's in your subconscious, is what actually starts to react.
Absolutely.
And when you become reactive, it gets worse. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in life, because you become reactive and you start becoming a little bit more explosive and trying to do this big, reaching across for like life, right? It's like you're trying to get to the top of the water to get a breath.
Right.
And they just drag you down. The octopus just slowly keeps pulling you down underwater.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing in life. When you're reactive in certain situations, you just make it worse. Mm-hmm. And my coach, Jason, he says there's a moment between when you learn about the situation and the reaction. Mm-hmm. There's like just that one very quick moment of calm that most people overlook. And if you're able to kind of capture that and kind of stay there before the reaction, you'll be able to respond there. Right. Now, what I find too is, obviously, because, in jiu-jitsu is, and that, like in life, I don't have the answer for that situation. And that's what makes me panic. Yeah. It makes me react. Yeah. So instead of reacting, knowing that I don't have the answer, I can just sit there and just say, accept the fact that I'm getting, okay, like this thing has submitted me. Yeah. Right? Like, let's start over so that I can ask the question, how do I get out of that next time? And that's a learning process. I mean, it takes a long time to master jiu-jitsu. 10 years at least for black belt.
7 to 10 years is the average. 10 years is the average. That's actually a little bit over 10 years is average. I got mine in 7.5 years, but like I said, I was obsessed.
You were training
twice a day, every day. We had a joke, I had this student that was, bummed because he broke up with his girlfriend. I was like, hey man, it's okay. Like, it took me 13 girlfriends to get my black belt. So that, instead of years, it was relationships that I'd sacrificed. So, because they, some people get jealous of your time or whatever, but I'd come home, like lunch break, jiu-jitsu. Wow. Go home, eat real quick, back to jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't get home till 9 o'clock. And so
when this state of thought or this obsession, if you will, takes over for you, like jiu-jitsu becomes this like thing you're just going to be doing, right, every day. Yeah. At what point did you figure out, like, no, like, I think this is what I'm gonna do with my life. Like, I want to have like my own jiu-jitsu gym? Or did you ever think you were gonna get there?
I actually didn't want to have a jiu-jitsu gym.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't want to teach. I wanted to be a competitor. Like I like dreamed of the day that I'd get my black belt, and I realized that I had started a little bit late. Like Brazilians start when they're 4 or 5. Like I started when I was 25. There was not a lot of jiu-jitsu in the area. Mitch and Keith Owen were the only black belts in the whole area at that time. There were only 2 jiu-jitsu gyms in the whole area to choose from. And then there was an MMA school that had some of the students that Mitch had trained, who would, because he would go over there actually and teach a couple of days a week jiu-jitsu to the MMA guys. It was called Combat Fitness at the time. Now it's SBG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I never really wanted to have a gym. In fact, like I was kind of selfish with my time at jiu-jitsu too. Like even as I progressed through the belts, I would not, and ashamedly so at this point, but it's kind of natural for like, I was so focused on myself, and I would like try to roll with the hardest guys in the room. I'd even be like rolling with, I was like, okay, I got this purple belt here. He's better than me. I'm going to train with him. Even while I was training with him, I'd be like, okay, Jacob's over there. He's a black belt. I'm going to train with him next. So like I'd go grab Jacob right after that round, and I wouldn't spend any time with this person, hashing out the round or learning from them or whatever. I would just try to go to the next hardest person. And I didn't really like, I didn't really teach anybody, like, even the new white belts or anything. So I was kind of selfish with my time. And that kind of changed after purple belt. I started realizing that like if you lift up all your training partners and you make them better, it's only going to make you better. There kind of used to be a stigma back then of like, circling back to a couple of your points of, there used to be kind of this stigma in jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is a very knowledge-based sport. So when you were talking about how like you didn't have the answer, and that created like an anxiety or like a reaction to the situation that's not in your best interest, then things just get worse. So there was this stigma that like you kind of wanted to keep all the things to yourself that were working for you, so they would continue to work for you. Right. But that's not how you get better. That's how you plateau. Right. It's like you start doing this skill set of things that works for you consistently, and that takes you to only so far.
Right.
So you basically have to give your secrets away. Like, hey, I keep doing this to you. You keep giving me this. You have to do this at X, Y, and Z in order to not allow that.
Right.
And that only makes me have to find new pathways forward. Right. So, and then also circling back to your point about, actually, I think I covered that. Yeah. So like, just, it's a knowledge thing. Like when and you can't have knowledge without mistakes. So,
and then the many.
Yeah. And any plan is better than no plan. I also tell my white belts that, is like, pick something that you're not going to know whether it's the right technique to use right now or not, because you don't really have the capacity or the experience to make that decision. But starting with any plan is better than starting with no plan, because the situation only gets worse if you do nothing. Right?
True.
And you don't learn anything from that.
True.
You only learn that you waited too long. Okay. So
true. So now that you're in this like position, and you have been for quite a few years now, you've been teaching.
Yeah, this is the 8th year that I've gone to school.
How do you know when somebody is ready for the next level? Like, how do you know this person is ready for the next stripe on their belt? How do you know they're ready for the next belt? So, for example, I hear some jiu-jitsu people on social media, and there's something as hardcore, and I don't know if necessarily it's hardcore, but it says, if I promote you to blue belt, that means that you should be able to beat every white belt under you. If a white belt is still beating you, you shouldn't be a blue belt. And it's the same thing for a purple. You should be able to beat any blue and any white belt under you. And if it's a blue belt that's beating you, then you shouldn't be a purple belt. But yeah, I don't necessarily see that in practice when you see people rolling. I mean, you still see some blue belts that can tap a purple belt. It might not be often, right? But it still happens.
Absolutely. It should still happen, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you know, or what is your philosophy for like, okay, you're ready for the next level?
Yeah. So, okay. I had to reflect on this a lot when I first took over the school, because like I felt a responsibility and just to kind of talk about taking over the school. So when I moved back from Virginia, I had literally just gotten my brown belt. Mitch approached me and was like, I'm thinking about stepping away. You know, I'm kind of burned out. I think I want to do other things with my life. And he's kind of an all in or all out type of person. He's like, you're the first person I thought of. Are you interested in taking over the school?
What a compliment.
And yeah, it was honestly, and you come back to timing, right? We talked about, you know, relationships and timing. And I was at a stage of my life, like I said, I never wanted to own a school. I hadn't even really been thinking about it.
Right.
And I hated my job and I was making good money, but it was like soul sucking. Like I was,
He was not happy. It's not for you.
was not happy. And so I was like, I'll try, you know, I'll do it. It's got to be better than this.
Right.
And I had planned on doing a little bit of each, like do the school and then also still do my job. But then you realize you're only half in both things instead of fully committed.
Right.
That was kind of his advice to me too, is like, you got to paint yourself into a corner and fight your way out. You know, you have to. You know, you don't give yourself a choice, right? So, and I kind of see a lot of wisdom in that. But so to your point about like development, I think you should still be getting tapped out at least by. It changes a little bit as you get to black belt, but as you are progressing, you should be still getting tapped out by the belts lower than you, because if you're not, at least at a certain point, because if you're not doing new things. You're back at that plateau of doing just the things that only work at this level.
Okay.
Right. So if you're not getting tapped out, usually you're not trying new things. You're not risking enough to learn new things. You could stay right here in your comfortable little zone of like, I always do X, Y, and Z and it works pretty good and I don't get tapped out by these blue belts and I'm going to keep doing that. Well, you're not. And I actually saw that in other people that were my peers before I moved to Virginia when I came back.
Okay.
They were the same. And I had really progressed because, well, not only did I learn from a new school where I was forced to learn new things,
Right.
they had stagnated. They had been doing the same things and the same things and the same things. And now I was ahead of them rather than they were my peers, right? So, so there's like two answers. You do need to push yourself and try not to make mistakes. And usually I save those times for when I'm either close to a new rank of a belt or I'm preparing for competition. But 90% of the time, around there, you should be in a playful mode in jiu-jitsu. You should be exploring. You should be learning about transitions, learning about reactions, and trying new things and adding to your skill set. The broader picture you have in jiu-jitsu, the person with more tools wins. And Marcos, who is another guy that I was under when I first got my black belt, taught me that. He said that you can get to a position where you can feel that the person doesn't have the answers, like you were saying. They're not defending the position properly. And so now I have you, right? Like we may have went through all these other scenarios where we're even, but now that I have you in this position, I'm the one that has the advantage. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you only have this small, comfortable zone, the second that you're in an uncomfortable place, jiu-jitsu is all about being comfortable and being uncomfortable, right? So you have to expand your skill set so that there's nowhere that you don't feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So and then for a more black and white picture, I always tell this at every belt promotion. White belt's the survival belt. You should be defending the 4 pinning positions consistently against people of your own size and skill level. And I always say that because back to your point about like, oh, I don't necessarily see, you know, that method working out in training. And, you know, it's because we live in a real world where physical advantages are real.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the skills or the technique to overcome that, then it works, right? So a young, strong, athletic person can make up for the lack of technique to a degree, right? And then also size makes a difference too.
Sure.
So at white belt is the survival belt. You're learning how to limit your risk of submission while you escape the 4 pinning positions, and you're doing that somewhat consistently against people your own size and skill level at white belt. So you're not tapping people out. You're not necessarily even sweeping people.
You just try to stay afloat.
You're staying afloat, right? And you're getting back to positions of where you have control. And finally, by the end of your white belt, maybe you have a sweep from a guard. Maybe you have a submission from a guard that you land on people sometimes against your own size and skill level.
Got it.
And then blue starts to become about controlling the top 4 pinning positions, passing the guard. Maybe you have a submission from one of your favorite 4 pinning positions that you hit somewhat consistently on people your own size and skill level. Purple belt is the advanced belt, and most of the advanced things happen when people start to stand up.
Got it.
So It's also the belt where you become a specialist. So you pick one of the advanced guards to hyper focus on. You make that your own. I know if I end up in Alex's, De La Hiva, that I'm most likely going to get swept or my back taken or have to worry about submissions.
Got it.
So you become really imbalanced in your jiu-jitsu at purple belt because you're hyper focusing on one of those advanced guards. Then the brown belt is where you go back out and round out your weaknesses. You go back, you became a specialist.
Smooth the edges.
Now you need to smooth the edges out. Black belt is the submission belt. You learn how to mitigate the risk of losing position while threatening submission and chaining together submission attempts so that you never allow your your opponent or your partner out of a defensive loop. So they're always at the disadvantage. So you mitigate the risk of losing position with submission opportunity and threat, and you keep those flowing so that the person can never escape the defensive loop that you've put them in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's kind of how I think about it.
You can see just watching, the difference in the grappling, of like the white belts all the way up to the black belts.
I had a kid's parent approach me the other day, and his kid is big for his age. He's been starting to do the adult program. And he's like, I stuck around and watched the adult practice, with Marco. And I was really interested to see the difference between the white and blue belts and then the purple to black.
Right.
He's like, the white and blue belts look like they're just white knuckling, hanging on the steering wheel and trying to stop everything from happening and stay tight and strong. And the purples and ups look like they're surfing. They look like they're flowing and misdirecting, and they look like they're barely sweating, and Jiu-Jitsu is about efficiency and using your opponent's movements against you and kind of almost allowing things to progress so that you can take advantage of the progression. Whereas when you're a white belt or blue belt, you got these blinders on and you're stuck in this like spot and it's difficult to navigate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, watching you roll with, even guys like twice your size that are purple and brown belts, sometimes even black belts, and it's just the ease in which you handle your rolls. And I'll be looking sometimes and you have a smile on your face, like you're smirking. And it's not in a cocky way. It's not in a this is easy. It's just like you're in this like flow state. And I recognize that smile for like that, kind of as, oh, I knew you were gonna go there.
Yeah.
Type of smile, like, oh, I knew you were gonna go there. I know what I'm gonna do next.
Yeah.
And because I know what I'm gonna do next, I know where you're going next.
Yeah, it's a game.
And then it happens, and it's just like watching this little mouse try to get away from this cat that is like, no, come back here.
That's a good way to
right
put it.
here. Like I'm just having so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
And the white belt is like, send help. Send help.
They're sinking.
Just throw me
Throw me a lifeline, bro.
Yes, something. So, so in your gym now, you have about how many adults?
About 120 adults.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, obviously, you work with kids as well.
Yeah.
And about how many kids do you have in there?
About 50.
50 kids now?
Yeah.
All between the ages of?
Yeah, between 5 and 13.
5 to 13?
Yep.
And then how soon can a kid get started in jiu-jitsu, you think?
Some places allow 4-year-olds. I don't personally allow 4-year-olds just because I think they need their own class and I think it needs to be a shorter time. I usually do, an hour for kids, and 4-year-olds, they kind of their attention starts to peter out after 30 to 40 minutes. And they're really just learning about body discovery. They can't really learn technique.
Right.
But they can learn how to keep their balance. So they're really doing like tumbling. So a lot of times, and jiu-jitsu tumbling is fine. It's good. But I oftentimes suggest, I heard George St. Pierre say this too, if they're not going to start martial arts at that age, then gymnastics.
Yeah. So they can get very
body awareness. Yeah, and I find a lot of similarities in gymnastics to jiu-jitsu because it's all about balance and body awareness. So always thinking about where their body is in relationship to your body.
Right. And breathing.
And breathing. Yeah.
The breathing. For sure. So especially, right, like you're saying that in the earlier stages of white belts and maybe even up to a certain point in blue belt. But yeah, I found myself, because you're like fighting for your life, or at least it feels like it, that you're holding your breath. And the next thing you know, you're now pinned down. And since you haven't been breathing for the past 20, 30 seconds, you're now like, I am gonna die.
Yeah.
Right?
I've gone there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to control yourself before you can control somebody else.
Right.
And that starts with a really simple thing like breathing. I remember Mitch used to tell me, I know every time you're about to try to move or execute a technique because you clinch down and you hold your breath. And so he's like, you need to learn how to do difficult things while you're breathing, not when you're about to do it. So because you're telegraphing what you want to do. And to your point too, if you allow it to go too far, you're kind of hyperventilating, and that's going to cause you to sink your energy much quicker. So it starts breathing. Starting with breathing starts to make you more comfortable, and it starts to give you back your critical thinking skills, so you're not in that like flight or fight.
You're right. Yeah. Okay, let me take a quick pause so I can go restroom it. Cool. Because I want to keep this. Okay, so yeah, so you were talking about the kids and gymnastics, right, with prior to 5 years old. Now, you and I know we've talked a little bit about this, because my kiddo, he could, like, we believe he's kind of on the spectrum a little bit, right? There's some developmental delays and whatnot. Sweetest kid.
Yeah.
And and I tell you, man, I don't think he's gonna be ready until maybe like age 9 or 10, when he's kind of really more ready for instruction. But the cool thing that you talked about in that conversation is you also work with kids that have autism, but and at first you had a very difficult time trying to figure out how to, because they were not really doing the technique after you taught them, and you're trying to figure this out, and you got there somehow, right? So like, how, like,
Tell me that's a bug, but so that's story. It's been one of my great pleasures as a coach I actually, for whatever reason, when I took over the school, I didn't necessarily even think about that being a possibility of working with kids with autism. And my first student, as they would Monty, he was only 5 when he came with autism. And, he reminds me of the honestly, and I'll come back to that in a second. But so in Jiu-Jitsu, the teaching methods for a long time were very like focusing on the technique and not necessarily the why. Like, here's the move. We'll learn the steps of the move, drill the steps of the move to death. It'll become muscle memory for you.
right.
But what I learned about teaching them was that they learn the opposite of most people. Most people kind of like that method. They're like, okay, I just want to learn the steps, and then I'll practice the steps, and then eventually it'll become a skill, and then I can figure out the why later.
Right.
But they go the other direction.
Okay.
They need to know why first.
Yep.
Because they don't really, like, the technique is an abstract thing to them.
Right.
Learning the steps of something. They need to be told a story. The story engages them there, their eyes light up. So they love jiu-jitsu. They love the why of jiu-jitsu. And then when the whys start to become a game, right? And then when the whys become a game, then the techniques fit into the whys. And I started to see this like crazy growth in skill after I figured that out. But it took me a while. I was frustrated. And he was frustrated. But and his father was also on the spectrum a little bit. And so both of them were, a little confused by jiu-jitsu at first, and he had some other social skills. So at first we did a bunch of Friday lessons to get him ready for class.
Right.
And then eventually he became a part of the class when there was as much as I could teach him in the private lessons without him having to do it against kids his own size. And so then he joined a class, and then the social kind of aspects of the class started to take their toll on him as well. He'd kind of like hide off in the corner and feel a little overwhelmed by the social interactions because he would get frustrated. The kids like to play games beforehand. And the rules of the games weren't necessarily like, didn't make sense to him, or he would try to like control the game.
Right.
But he went from kid that would get frustrated and go kind of throw fit over in the corner. What he realizes is that if if he allows there to be some give and take in the game, where he offers, maybe we should do it this way. This rule seems fun, and then they'll also be okay with them saying so. Because that was the problem before, is that you wanted to be a certain way and can control it, and then you would run off. And I'm sure that's normal of a lot of kids, but
Did some kid is human.
yeah. But once he realized that he could do some give and take, and then eventually be the one that's kind of like leading the game, his confidence just shot up. He was the kid that was like running the games now, and it was pretty cool. And his dad like came to me. He's like, I don't know what would have happened with Bonnie. I just saw this, being kind of vulnerable to maybe bullies or social interactions like that. Um, and I don't know what would have happened to him if it wasn't for jujitsu. So that's one of my favorite stories. Not just the jujitsu, he's like wrestling in middle school now, doing really well. I'm amazing. And I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, and then I ran into them at a restaurant. Oh, just like watching the young man that he's becoming is pretty amazing. So, but yeah, it's been one of my and so now I teach his dad too. So he came to me and was like, I would have to tell him money he should do this or he should do that while I'm washing the train. And like figured if I'm gonna tell him what to do, I should probably know what I'm talking about. So he started training. He's still training. It's been like almost 6 years now. Oh, good. He's a purple belt. He's like, it's a lot harder than it looks. He's like, I owe you an apology because like I was telling him to do this and that. He was trying, but it's not as easy as it looks. And so that's this. Yeah.
It's not as easy as
Yeah. So I still have some kids that are on the spectrum that I teach, and another thing that I learned with them is that, again, vocabulary and words are very overwhelming to them. So saying like scissor sweep and this and that kind of overwhelms them. They really like to shally or monkey see, monkey do, or mimic you, I'd say. Because I'd try to teach them the warm ups that they put your hand here, then do this and do that, like technique, right? And they would not, it would just be struggling. But then all I said was just wash them with your eyes, and you're gonna be my shower. And the way that you say things to them too, like if you just talk to them, if you just talk to that thing, they're gonna zone out. You have to like encourage their wonder, right? And you're gonna be can you be my shower? And they mimic, and suddenly they were doing it almost perfectly. I didn't even have to help them with the technique. That you just demonstrate to them and make them engage their wonder, and that makes a world.
like he causing me.
Yeah, and do this. Yeah.
Almost challenging. That's super cool, man. I mean, what's what do you think is like the biggest philosophy a person should live by if they choose to start jiu-jitsu? I think it might be a little bit easier sort of when you're younger, right? And the very younger, it's a kid, teenager, to start, because you have the flexibility, you have the time, right? The schedule per se, for sure. Hopefully with the help of your parents, obviously. But as you become an adult and you start getting to these obligations, I would love to learn the skill for the self-defense part of it, but I don't necessarily have I can't wait to compete.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't want to necessarily have to be a competitor. Like I am at the point in life where I'm just trying to avoid injury, for sure, as much as possible, as I have to make them. I don't want to build them all,
For sure.
so sometimes it can be frustrating, especially for males, because we have just that personality of competition, right? To see maybe somebody a little younger or similar in age but advancing quicker, because I only have the ability to go twice a week. I mean, what's the minimum amount of time you should spend per week? And if you choose to start jiu-jitsu, for somebody to say, okay, that'd be worthwhile for me to do. I don't have to commit to like competition or be this athlete, but maybe there's something more for me than just a physical aspect of the so like, what do you recommend for like a maybe 30-40-year-old who wants to join jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So I'd say that's like one of the main concerns I get when, people a little bit later in life start wanting to train. Is that they're very concerned about injuries. It's very normal. A few things about that. One is that like jiu-jitsu is nicknamed the gentle art, even though, yeah, it's a little bit of a misnomer, definitely get some injuries. But I would say like as far as like catastrophic injuries, not like sprains and things like that, muscle pulls. As far as like catastrophic injuries, I used to think like I have the student disappear for a month, maybe or a few weeks, and then they come back and they'd be like, I got injured, and I'd be, oh no, that sucks. Like, and I'd always just never even ask about it. I just assumed it was when they were training and they injured themselves training.
Right.
Now I ask every single time, and it's almost never true. It's almost always like I was mountain biking or I was snowboarding or if it's a kid or they were at jump time, those trampoline parks. And so, but there are a few, they know when you say, well, how often should you train? What should value be when you train? Uh, 3 hours a week, I think, is probably minimum to see steady progress.
3 hours a week. So does that mean like 3 1 hour classes per week?
Yeah.
Or would 2 1 hour classes with a half hour of rolling afterwards, an hour and a half each plus a week? Yeah, it's still
Well, that'd be ideal, yeah, because you'd be sparring and stuff. But the your time is more valuable when you're an adult. I think that's also one of my frustrations sometimes as a coach is that you have to come into practice with attention, whether your time is limited or not. You should be doing this anyways, but sure, coming in with intention. A lot of people come and they just show up and they go through the motions, and that's a really long progression. If you set yourself goals and you set yourself, even it can be roll to roll, it could be day to day, it could be week to week. There's not like a special recipe, but you do need to be varying up the way that you train and going into each day or roll with intention. Like, I'm going to work on this today. Instead of trying to, jiu-jitsu is a huge pie, right? A huge world. Yeah, you know, I break it down into pieces and and be very specific with your time. So and that gets more important as you reach purple belt. At first, you don't really know like what to work on. You have no idea. So you're basically just a sponge, a place, just like slate. But about after a year to a year and a half of training, you should for sure have a lot of questions. But you should also be going into each round, each day, each week. Or fuck, I need to work on this position, or I need to work on a skill set. So hyper focusing on those things from time to time, and then also allowing yourself freedom too in between those times, right? So hyper focusing this week, next week I'll just show up and roll and go through the motions that week.
like in faces.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's right.
Okay, very cool. Um,
The first year of jiu-jitsu is the most dangerous for injuries because you don't know what you're doing.
and then you go into aggressive.
Yes, and as you learn more about the techniques of the game that's being played, you're able to have a lot more give and take instead of just tick tick, and that's much safer. So just to run the first year. Yeah, they're really honestly. I remember going for it, trying to open the doorknob on my front door, and my elbow is just so sore from not tapping early enough. Are you seatbelt? That's early. Tap early, tap often, ask questions. That's the first. That's really the mantra.
Absolutely. I also want to speak a little bit now, kind of just changing gears a little bit out of the jiu-jitsu specific, but just from like a personal level, who do you consider like your closest supportee?
Oof. Obviously my coaches right now. Honestly, uh, uh, to be honest, like my first female black belt, Jessica Knight, she and I have always like synced up on learning how we learn and how we drill. And she's a very dedicated person. She got her black belt in 8 years, and she was just like me, training twice a day, competing whenever she could, helping out with class. I wasn't helping out with class. Yeah, she helps out. She volunteers her time. Um, so she's probably my right arm. And then Patrick, he was one of my purple belts. He helps me out a couple of days a week. I've got my 6 a.m. coaches, so that's probably my group. Yeah.
For jiu-jitsu and business?
Yeah.
And what about in personal life?
Oh, and Marshall.
Yeah, what about like in personal life, and like just like general, like who's like your closest support system there?
My wife for sure. You. Yeah. For sure, but you, pretty honestly, you mentored me in business. Like, you've been helping me, grow the school and do some things that I wouldn't have done. that I should have done, to be clear, for our own. So, my wife,
Absolutely.
yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing. Well, it's not, it's very easy to like you, right? Because you're a very home guy. Um, Even though you could potentially kill the entire staff in the building, did not ever once act like it. You never like necessarily when we're out in like public situations, when we go out to restaurants or whatever. I mean, not once do you mention anything about, jiu-jitsu or like, trying to stack a guy up or anything like that, or talk about your skills. And this is something that is also, this one like, no, backed by very close people to you, uh, who said that along one of your main values being loyalty, it said that you're super loyal, very humble, you don't ever talk about yourself, and you had this really good skill at being able to listen to other people's opinions without having to fight for your opinion to be the right one. And but instead you ask a lot of questions, and you allow the other person to express themselves, which is a fantastic skill, especially in the world that we're in today. Is just so this or not, one side or the other, and I have to be right, or no, we are actually right, and there's no time created to find out what they actually hadn't come through a conversation by asking questions. So uh obviously one of these people's like, from your wife, and your humor, your sense of loyalty, uh and just how warm and welcoming you are. And she, I thought she was going to be, this like another just tough guy, who's like the anime guy and stuff, but he's the sweetest person. Just, yeah, well, we're just one rattle. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much.
Just so good count for mom.
Oh, wow.
Seattle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You think that, I appreciate that. I'm like blushing. So I think, jujitsu forces you, or I don't know, force or encourage, because it can definitely go the other way where like you allow it to push you away from jujitsu. But you have to start, and this kind of comes back to like your question about training and avoiding injuries. So you have to start from a place of humility. Like if you don't realize, okay, I'm on with a blue belt, I'm not going to win, but I want to survive and I want to do it safely. All right, jujitsu is about keeping yourself safe.
No.
It's a deep, that's another thing that's a little bit different that I had to come to the realization a little bit later in jiu-jitsu, is that I used to think like, the best defense is a good offense. And that's true to their degree, especially in competition. But when it comes to like training on a regular basis, day to day, the roots of jiu-jitsu is defense. Defense becomes control, and then control becomes offense, right? And so you have to start with a place of humility. And, I think that when you do that and you're able to embrace that and then overcome and persevere through obstruction and through, difficult situations, your confidence just grows and grows and grows and grows through time. So, and back to your point about like, not beating my chest and stuff in public about it. No, my dad and Mitch used to say, the same thing. I used to ask the nation, would be, what if you wear like jiu-jitsu t-shirts or like a jiu-jitsu hat or something like that? You don't have any like jiu-jitsu stuff, like you don't wear, like putting it out there. I really did ask him that one time. It's kind of funny that he say that. And he said like, why do I need to tell anyone? Yeah, like, my dad used to say that the guy that you want to worry about is the quiet guy, not the guy that's mouthing off. Yeah, he was a police officer, so the guy that's running up his mouth the loudest is usually not the guy you have to be worried about. It's usually the guy that's quiet.
Yes. And that's also with business, like or just some situations in general. You see the loudest guy, right? Or gal, just like wanting the attention, wanting to be the spotlight. And then,
Well, a lot of times that it comes back to that, like you were talking about, like usually the guys that don't know how to fight are the ones that are the loudest, right? And I think that comes from a place of insecurity, right? Like they don't have another option. So they're gonna go to the option they know, which is like we might try to be the loudest,
Absolutely.
you know.
And I mean, even one of the reviews, excuse me, it shows and it speaks to how humble you are. Because one of the guy, I'm gonna call.
Oh, like edit this out. Allergies, bro. It's raining.
Crew. Vivi metroid kalar pitch.
Don't ran first aid train too as a black girl. Give me the eye, boy.
There was this guy, Tim, that stopped by your gym to train, and he was wondering what gym would be best. And you actually gave him a little bit of insight into each of the gyms around town without saying anything bad. Like you actually up-taught each gym and told them what to expect from each of the different jiu-jitsu gyms available in town. To on the hips, like, you know, if I know that if I choose to do jiu-jitsu here, I'm gonna be really good at it. I don't know if he ended up training there or if he ended up moving town or not, but you know how many other business owners would jump at the opportunity to bring the other businesses down to try to make yours like I'm the best here, like not yelling any on so what's hell. But for you to be like, no, you know what, this was good, this was gonna, you know, more focus on this and that. This is the atmosphere you'll expect here. So I mean, that requires a very high level of professionalism, right? Yeah, and so just more to speak on the type of person you are.
Yeah. Yeah, we went through a crazy growth of jiu-jitsu gyms after COVID.
Was it coming after I was said it?
Yeah, everybody moving here, you know, especially from places that have a big street culture like California, Washington, Oregon, and stuff. And so yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's always a red flag to me when somebody completely discounts an alternative to you. Yeah, it's like you know, and you want to be in a. I love what's best for them too. Like if they're looking for a certain thing from jiu-jitsu for themselves, like if I don't provide that, then I'm not gonna try to pull you into a place where you're gonna be unhappy and not in the best environment to learn, because that's not good. Totally, and it's not good for you. Totally, like because having a jiu-jitsu space is a culture.
Yep.
And you want to be in the culture that's right for you. It's like being in a relationship. If it's not the right relationship, it's going to present problems for both of you. Yeah, I think that I'm confident in the service that I provide and the culture that I create, and I'm not trying to sell that to you. I'm trying to let you discover that for yourself. And
Totally.
yeah.
So I mean, you've placed in multiple competitions. Yeah. IBJJF, you know, Seattle Open second place, Denver Open first place, and U.S. Grappling Submission first place. And are you still as currently in the Northwest Submission Challenge welterweight WB champ?
I am, yeah. I have a match on May 10th, defending my belt against Andrew Cruz, who's the featherweight champ of the local MMA Front Street Fights. He's in black belt at SVG. Yeah, we're on an OB match, 10 minutes sub only.
That's a great gym. So yeah, I mean that's a SBG gym. Yeah,
Yeah, SVG's the NBA gym in the area. Yeah, and they just had Chad Mendez move here and start training there. No, is he? Yeah, he lives big out.
interesting. I know he's like a big outdoor guy, like archer, hunter.
Yep.
So I mean, makes sense. Idaho, yeah, it'll be a good fit. But
So, but let's be cool. Super Bowl for them, yeah.
awesome, man. What's next? What's next for Ben and the base?
So I got my match. We just moved into a new spot a little over a year ago, so I want to keep improving the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see. I've got some people that are interested in maybe opening up another base at some point.
There you go.
When they get their black belt and stuff. So
Yes, yeah. There you go.
yeah.
And then that'd be away in probably what, like the King County area?
Actually, yeah.
That'd be awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down at Horse and letting people know who you are and the person you are, because I think everybody needs to know. And let us support people that deliver stuff like for the community.
and are good people in general. So thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate you, dude. Yeah.